there, I'm Adam Wright. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the show. Each week, I strive to bring you interesting interviews and commentary related to some of the more pressing issues of the day, and our discussions range from politics to entertainment, even lifestyle issues. And if you like what you hear, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, or if you're listening on YouTube, you can hit subscribe and like there. And of course, you can also always visit my website at theadamwrightshow.com. Most importantly, I hope you'll tell your friends. And again, thanks for tuning in. Well, the pandemic wasn't all bad in that so many of us spent time home, and that meant more time in front of the tube. But if you're like me and you have a number of streaming services, the choices of what to watch can be pretty daunting. Even more so, it can be pretty confusing where to watch, both in terms of services as well as finding the right technology that makes it all accessible. Add to the mind-numbing choices, a whole lot of folks have decided to cut the cord and only use streaming for consuming their favorite programs. So where to start, and more importantly, where does it all end, are the big questions. And to help us unravel this spider web of entertainment, we've got Adam Moreau. Adam was a weekly guest on my radio show, and he's a TV expert and pretty knowledgeable at all things TV programming. And it's my pleasure to welcome him to the podcast. Hey, Adam.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. You know, I was thinking, as somebody who grew up in the 60s and the 70s in Boston, we had a total of 7 channels, and we didn't get cable until the early 80s. And everybody always thought that was the golden era of television. But I really believe this is the golden era of television. What do you think?
I think we are, as someone, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So, cable was always a given for me. I'll never forget the first day. It was Christmas Eve. I remember I came home from church one year and turned on the TV, and there was this thing on demand where I could, watch whatever I want, various programs and so forth. I'll never forget that, So this stuff has always been a given for me. But in terms of the golden age, I mean, we are, can you say beyond the golden age at this point? It's just, there was the guy who runs FX, the cable network, John Landgraf, his name is, visionary guy for programming. He coined a term, I gotta say, it was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago now. He said, we are at peak TV.
Well, that's a far cry from must-see TV.
Right. He said, we are at peak TV, basically saying there's so many shows to watch. And I want to say that year, his count was, there was, I don't know, 400 scripted shows and, God knows how many unscripted shows, right?
Mm.
News broadcasts and reality shows and things like that. And that was, there's so many choices. That's absurd. And now that number is over 1,000 in terms of just scripted shows. It's really just crazy.
It's, and it changes the way, obviously, that people are consuming programming, and the entire viewership experience has changed. I find now that if something isn't bingeable, right, they haven't dropped all the episodes, I find myself waiting until they do, so that I can go back and binge it. It's completely changed the way we consume television.
A lot of that, I think, has to do with the urgency in which you want to see what it is available to you. Like, I'll give you an example. The Disney Plus model, where they're dropping new episodes of Star Wars shows or Marvel shows, those are weekly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to watch them the day they come out for fear of spoilers on the internet. It's just like it's always been with Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead or, any of those big, water cooler-esque shows. That does still exist. But the whole binge model is has encouraged people to rip through things. But you're starting to get some pushback from programmers, writers. They like having it come out weekly because it gives people more time to digest their show, to talk about it like the old days. I'm using my air quotes here. You can't see it. Talk about like the old days where people can just take things as they come instead of ripping through 10 episodes of programming in a day and moving on to the next thing.
Is that because obviously there's still a cost to producing high quality programming, and the faster somebody rips through their programming, the faster they got to come up with new stuff.
Right. And you look at, so if you look at social media as a tool of promotion, wouldn't you rather have people tweeting and posting about your show every week instead of on just the first day it comes out.
No, I think that's a very good point. For me, though, I think it's also the older I get, I have a hard time remembering what happens week to week, let alone, getting into a new season of something and remembering what the hell happened the season before.
Don't worry, old timer. They'll still give you the previously on at the beginning of it that you can go back to. But I've used the example over the past probably 10 years that it's a very challenging thing, especially for programmers to develop something that is a hit, because really, we used to talk about this on your radio show when we were on. What is a hit?
Right.
How do you quantify that now? And the old way of programming television was you sit down in front of your TV, you watch what's on, and the other networks counter program. They do something that tries to encourage you to change the channel at that moment in time. Then when the DVR was introduced, it became, well, you have to compete against what's on television live at the same time, and then also what people might have recorded. And now essentially programmers are competing against not only every single show that's on television currently that you can consume on another channel or on demand or recorded, but you're also essentially competing against the history of television. At any point, you could be watching a show from the 1980s or the 90s, or and that's taking from present day viewership. It's a wild model, and
Well,
it's accelerated so quickly.
and it's amazing to think of, really, truly, how many different choices you have. And you talk about those water cooler moments, and I think we've gotten so far away from them because everybody's watching something different. It
Right,
used to be
it makes it very challenging.
right. I remember back in, well, even just take even recent history when The Sopranos hit. Everybody, I mean, that was a revolutionary show, and you knew that everybody who had HBO, you were watching The Sopranos on Sunday night. And it was one of those things where you knew you could get to the office the next day and talk about it. Or if you go back to the 80s and Cheers or Moonlighting, or any of those types of shows, the really popular ones. But yes, now you have them ad infinitum. I mean, they're just completely everywhere.
And you have to. I find that the best way to still have those conversations is to exist in groups of fandom within your friends. I have groups of people that I always talk about. Oh, did you watch the newest? Did you watch the newest episode of The Mandalorian this week, or did you watch the newest episode of Yellowstone this week? Like, I have people that I know that are watching those as a priority. My wife has people that I say we because I'm sucked into watch them as well. Did you watch The Real Housewives last night? Oh my God, can you believe what happened? But it's not everyone. Like, years ago, you used to go to the office and there's 4 shows on at night in the 80s.
Right.
There's only so many, how many people is going to watch Cheers? Well, almost everybody at work probably is. But now you have to silo that conversation into the different groups of people and the different interests everyone has.
Well, it's funny because I find, and even it's less so now, but I find even just a couple of years ago, everybody had Netflix, or most people had Prime. And when it comes to streaming services, I know it's daunting for so many folks because of all the choices. My guess is most of our listeners have Netflix and Prime Video. And I mean, would you say those are good places to start for people who are thinking about either A, cutting the cord, or just who want to start the streaming process? Because there are still a lot of people. You and I are pretty massive television consumers, but there are still a lot of people that just throw on their cable box and watch whatever's on cable.
I do every night. I don't think I could live without it. I like having live linear television, which, is now I can just even stream without a cable box in my house through my cable company. I can just do that without a box. So I still like regular TV. But in terms of programming, it's not that simple anymore. If you go back, I was explaining to my how old is she? My 12-year-old daughter the other day about how Netflix used to come in the mail.
Right.
I'm at that age now where I'm like, back, you won't
Back in
believe
the old
this,
days.
years ago, how Netflix used to come in the mail. And I'll never forget when Netflix started streaming things. There was a dream that I think me and many millions of other people probably had, that Netflix was going to be the end game, right? You could stream anything there because on disc, you could get anything from Netflix, no matter what movie or TV show, you could always get it from Netflix on disc. There was this thought that Netflix would ultimately be the repository of everything.
Let me
It would
tell
be
you
like a
something.
library.
I had this idea in 1984. I kid you not. I remember standing in my living room in my apartment at UMass in 1984 and thinking, why couldn't we have a repository of all the movies? And then you could access that somehow. I didn't know how.
It was called Blockbuster Video at the time.
Yeah, right. But who knew? But we had video stores then, but there was not
Yeah.
that on demand. And I actually thought of on demand before anybody else. And
Well, you missed the boat on that
I
one.
missed it. Yeah.
But Netflix, that was the dream for having it to be a repository,
Right.
right? And obviously now it's very much not, because like prior to our call here, I went and did a little homework, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 8 major streaming services.
So let's
If
run
you
them. Let's run them down. I think most people know about Netflix and they know
Right.
about Prime.
Netflix and Prime, and Prime is, you would say Prime is the second largest,
Mm,
but Amazon counts Prime Video subscribers as people who have the Prime service,
right.
because the shipping service. So that's a bit of a, like, they have 200 million Prime subscribers. So how many of those are really using the video service all the time? I don't know.
That's a
But
really good point. No, that's a great point. And then even fewer who are using maybe the audio service, for
Right.
the
I mean,
music.
it's just a very, Amazon's a very different value proposition. They want to give you $129 a year so that you can get shipping, photo storage, movie streaming, all this stuff all together.
Right.
It's a different model. But Netflix is up to 222 million subscribers, right? They had the lead. They started out of the gate early and have clearly established a very wide range of content. But what's happening now is Netflix is starting to lose their status as the repository, because you have someone, for example, like Disney Plus, right? Disney started a subscription service just maybe, we're not even 3 years deep on this, and they already have 130 million subscribers.
All the Beatles
The
fans.
Disney.
The Beatles
Yeah, clearly,
fans
yes.
pump the numbers and then they quit.
I think there's other fans as well, believe it or not. Through Disney's acquisition of Star Wars and Marvel,
Right.
and also serving as, I use the word repository, the repository of everything Disney. It's a very robust catalog. But I've used the example that for Disney to close the gap on Netflix, which Netflix is, like I said, 222, Disney's at 130. For Disney to close that gap, they have to somehow broaden their appeal, because you, for example, are not going to have Disney Plus on an ongoing
Correct.
basis.
Correct.
Right? You don't do any of that stuff. But because Disney owns, for example, Fox, not Fox News, but the 20th Century Fox, the movie studio.
Right.
Once they get all the rights to that back, they could choose to put all that on Disney Plus. Right now in the US, they'll probably put it on Hulu, which is a complicated situation. But, if they put all that in there, imagine the power of that. Every movie 20th Century Fox has ever made, all the Marvel, all the Star Wars, all the Disney, that's a strong service.
Well, it's even, and it's so funny because I was thinking about Disney the other day. I worked in a video store for a while back in the mid 80s. And, the two categories of rentals, which were the highest, were kids, Disney cartoons
Yep.
and movies, and porn. With Disney, I mean, that was always a giant category for video
Right.
rentals, because everyone who has kids wants to be able to access that content. And if it's exclusive to Disney, then there's no surprise those numbers are as high as they are.
Right, because all the Disney stuff was on Netflix previously.
Right.
And it's not anymore. I mentioned Hulu, so I guess we can segue to that. Hulu, which is, was originally largely a television platform. It was created and co-owned by ABC, NBC, and Fox, not CBS. It was created as like this, again, repository. If you wanted to stream broadcast television shows, you could go do them on Hulu. Now that, let's see, ABC is owned by Disney, so they still have the largest ownership stake in Hulu because they got Fox's share when they bought them out. Comcast/NBC still owns another portion, but they're on their way out. They've already agreed to sell to Disney at some point in the next couple of years.
Do they still own
So-
Universal?
Yes, that's under the Comcast.
So there's a
umbrella.
whole other studio there.
Yes. So
Right.
all of the NBC stuff will ultimately come off of Hulu, and Hulu will shift over probably under the Disney Plus umbrella. If you look at Disney's strategy in Europe, this, the combination of Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus are all one product in Europe. They're not three like they are here. So there's stuff on Hulu that you can watch, for example. You go beyond that, you have Peacock, which is owned by Comcast and NBC, right? You can watch that for free. You can pay $5 a month and get, they pulled The Office back there, for example. They pay big bucks to buy The Office back off of Netflix. So they have The Office there. They paid WWE, which you know me, I'm a wrestling fan. They paid WWE the right to have all their programming there. Plus, they have all the Universal movies on Peacock. And that's free. If you still have cable, that's free if you have Cox or Xfinity at your home.
Right.
They have 25 million active subscribers, but they're very new. You also have Paramount Plus, right? Paramount Plus is CBS's and Viacom's baby, right? Which is all the CBS shows, all the MTV, Comedy Central, all that stuff is siloed there. Paramount movies.
So the reality of it is it's going to get more confusing for consumers, not less.
Yes. So what's happening is
because it's become more bifurcated, right? I mean, people are going to have to go to different places to get
stuff.
Right.
Everybody wants their own stuff back behind their fence, where I think the thought process used to be, well, we can just license everything to someone else, make all that money. Now they realize, well, if we license it to ourselves, we can make more money, and the last block is HBO Max, which I just think is the best service.
I agree.
Because it has HBO's entire library of programming, all their new originals, all the Warner Brothers movies are there. I think it has the most robust and high quality block of programming. You have HBO on your cable subscription, you get that for free.
I was thinking about how that all interferes with the ability, and we saw it in, at the Emmys, for example, where you have, and even at the Academy Awards, where you have so many of these streaming programs that were created for, content created for a streaming service, now competing obviously with the networks, and they all compete with each other to buy programming. I mean, that has got to be, is it covered by subscription cost? Is that why we keep seeing subscription costs going up? And how do the networks ever compete with this?
Well, the networks, if you look at all the things I just read off to you, the networks are involved in all of this. Okay, the major broadcast networks have a stake or significant ownership in all of these, in a variety of these different services.
Will they buy programming that they wouldn't put on their network, but they put on Peacock Plus?
Oh, hands down.
For example, I know that a lot of folks, I don't watch much network programming. In fact, I watch almost none. I watch sports, and maybe some news. That's about it. Because I find the quality of the programming, the new content that's being created that you're seeing on Netflix or on Hulu or on Prime is so much better than what I've come to see in the formula. This is my opinion. In the formulaic, episodic television, the dialogue's better. The acting is better. There are bigger stars. They can swear. They can show more graphic content, whether it be nudity or violence, if it's appropriate for the show. And so for me, I find it to be much more compelling television.
Yeah, the traditional broadcast networks of, NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox are definitely playing at a disadvantage. They're stuck on a linear viewership platform of, episodes that are at the most 42 minutes long, typically, without commercials. And they're governed, like you said, they can't swear. There's only so much they can do, and they have to structure the show around commercial breaks.
Right.
They are, and this has been the case for years now, especially when, if you remember when the shift happened, when people started watching the things on HBO, The Sopranos, and, Showtime stepped forward with things like Homeland. That put network shows at a disadvantage, because what's going to be the better show? The Sopranos, The Wire, Homeland, or whatever dispensable
CSI
cop show you have on this week. But it's the audience that you're programming for, because there's a lot of people that watch, I use words regular TV, who just want normal dispensable programming. Life is hard enough. I don't have to watch a serious show at night. I just want to watch a cop drama. That's everyone has a different preference. And if anything, streaming has opened up the door so that people can continue to watch more of whatever it is they really like.
It's interesting. We're talking to Adam Moreau, who's our resident TV expert on the Adam Wright Show. It's funny because it really confused me when I first saw this. And I was like, well, no, this makes sense. Prime, during the Super Bowl, had a commercial saying, starting next season, Thursday nights, if you want to watch Thursday Night Football, exclusively on Prime.
So, yeah, Amazon with Thursday Night Football just goes to show you anything is possible with money. Last year when the NFL renegotiated all of their football, rights deals, Amazon paid for the exclusive rights to Thursday Night Football for an 11-year deal.
Wow.
So this is the first time this has ever been done. Football is only
11
be on
years.
a digital platform. 11 years for more than $1 billion a year is what they're reporting it went for.
That is extraordinary. How many new subscribers? Now, how will they? Here's a question. Before we even get to what kind of new subscriptions that will bring in, how do they deal with advertising during the game? They'll sell advertisements just like the networks would?
I mean, Amazon has a whole, has sales teams. They have people that sell. Right now, a lot of it is very much for products that you can buy
on Amazon. Right.
But you think Amazon's going to have a problem running commercials for its own stuff over the course of that game?
Well, and they're going to have to recoup the cost of that. They're going to have to sell they're going to they're going to have to sell commercials to.
And that's something that, we're kind of flying into a new avenue for still, because even you look at, when you watch a sport like March Madness or the Olympics, for example, if you watch those on the streaming services, a lot of it is just a simulcast of what happens to be on the linear network at the time. It's what's on CBS. It's what's on NBC. It's the same commercial breaks. But for a whole football game, I mean, you'd have to imagine, like, I don't know, Chevy's going to want a commercial on there, right?
I would think so.
Right. That makes sense. And, but it just goes to show you, Adam, the amount of money that Amazon is willing to do just to get involved in this game. Right. We talked about the Super Bowl. Did you see the commercial for Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series?
I did.
Right. They paid $500 million just for the rights to make that.
Not to mention what it cost. Not to mention what it cost to put it into the Super Bowl. I saw that $7 million was the average spot rate for a 30-second spot.
Still going up.
That's incredible. So they must believe that the audience in terrestrial TV and or cable television is still there to be able to watch a game on NBC. I mean, $7 million is a lot of money for a 30-second spot.
The Super Bowl is a sure thing.
Right.
Look, Dr. Dre paid $7 million of his own money to produce that halftime show because the Super Bowl halftime show was a sure thing. So, it really is remarkable.
Yeah. What other services out there, streaming services, do you recommend that people take a look at?
Well, I mean, the only one of the major one, like if you're a fan, the only last one I was going to say is Discovery Plus, really, because if you're a fan of the HGTVs, the Food Networks, History, A&E, all those, they're all under Discovery's umbrella now. And for, $5 or $7 a month, you can watch basically the entire history, no pun intended, of those networks.
Right.
Right. Every fixer upper, every diner, drive-ins and dives, every American Pickers that you could want from here to eternity is all on Discovery Plus.
Are those commercial free for the most part?
Well, for $7 a month, they're ad free.
Right,
sure.
Right.
So if that's your jam, there's a service just for that sort of stuff.
Well, it's interesting because I watch there's a British show that I like that's on Prime, and it was on for 20 seasons. And if I'm watching seasons like 12 through 20, they're actually showing them on the IMDb network, and they're pumping in commercials, even though I'm paying for Prime.
IMDb TV is a subsidiary of Amazon. They own that product. They bought out IMDb a couple years ago. That's their product. And just like anything else, those seasons are licensed to IMDb TV, which you can just watch for free. You don't need to have a Prime subscription to watch IMDb TV, but it's built into your infrastructure
Mhm.
of the Prime app. So yeah, there's commercials there.
And let's talk about that infrastructure a little bit. We'll talk about some hardware issues here. I find that is it better if you've got a smart TV, and I would say I don't know what the percentage of people that have smart TVs are, 50% maybe. I don't know. I'm just
I
guessing.
mean, these days, almost any TV you can buy is smart.
Right, but a lot of people are using the Roku stick or the Fire Stick
Yep.
or whatever to access their content if they don't have a smart TV. Is it better to buy, or does it not matter? Just it's more convenient to buy your streaming service, whatever it may be, whether it's Paramount Plus or whether it's Netflix or Amazon, to buy it through, let's say you're watching on your cable system. So you've got it right as part of your system or as part of your Prime package. Or,
Well, that's a those are kind of two very different answers, right? The If you buy it through, for example, like Comcast's X1 system, right,
right,
which I think you and I both have because we're in a Comcast area. The convenience of doing that is that it gets billed through your cable bill. So it's a one-stop billing, right?
but the same thing exists on Prime.
Correct. They call them Amazon channels,
Right.
right? And all those go into the Prime app. But there was a big thing, and I'll let you guys Google it on your own. There was a big thing with HBO and Amazon where HBO was adamant they no longer wanted an HBO channel on Amazon. They wanted people using the HBO Max app. And there was a big falling out, and they ultimately ended up parting ways. And there is no HBO channel on Amazon anymore.
Right.
Um, so in terms of that, whether it's easier or not, I mean, most it's six of one, half dozen of the other. But I think your next question was going to be which is easier, using a streaming device or through your smart TV or your cable system. It's all how many buttons you care about pushing, really. You know,
Well, it's so true. And I was thinking about the fact that I actually got rid of cable. I cut the cord this year.
Yep.
And I uh, consider myself a pretty technologically competent guy. And I went to YouTube TV, but I
Yes.
found the learning curve to be really steep, as good as I may be with that kind of stuff. And you're
Well,
right.
I
It's
think
another button to have
that's
to
habit.
push.
Yeah, that's very much habit and how we have all grown up with that ecosystem. You know, I like having a cable box where all my channels are in one place, everything's on demand, and Comcast builds in Netflix and all that other stuff. So if I want to watch whatever, I can just say it into the remote and it'll open up whatever app I want. Roku does something similar, same thing, talking remote, where it'll open up whatever app it is you're looking for.
Right.
It's not that difficult, but the hardest part is for most people trying to figure out where what you want to watch actually is.
You're
Because
you're 100% right.
right, I mean,
Yes.
we've made it so easy to just say into a remote, I want to watch Yellowstone, but you don't know where Yellowstone actually is a lot of the time. Like I'll use Yellowstone as a great example. If you want to watch Yellowstone when it's on regular TV, it is on the Paramount channel on cable. If you would like to watch Yellowstone on demand, the most recent season is available on demand through the Paramount. It's available through Paramount on demand. It's in the Paramount app on your Roku or smart TV or whatever. If you would like to watch the previous seasons of Yellowstone, you would go, oh, sure, I'll just subscribe to Paramount Plus. Yeah, you would think that, except Peacock licensed Yellowstone for streaming. So if you would like to watch the first several seasons of Yellowstone, it is on Peacock.
I brought you on the podcast because I thought you were going to make things so much easier for
No, it
people.
only gets worse.
I know it's really crazy to try to find stuff.
I made this example a couple years ago, even when I was just talking about a movie, right? I wanted to watch, at the time, the horror movie series, The Purge, right? I wanted to watch the first one, and it wasn't on demand. It wasn't on Netflix. It wasn't on Amazon. Now I could rent it from, Amazon for $3.99 or $4.99 or whatever, but it wasn't free anywhere. It wasn't on HBO. I ultimately, in order to get it for part of something that I'm already paying for or for free, I literally got it from the public library on Blu-ray because it wasn't streaming anywhere else. And that inherently is the problem with where we are currently in streaming and stuff is, well, what do you do if it's not available somewhere? You just have to wait for somebody to license it again.
And then how do you
Because,
find out when it comes on?
you know,
When is it available?
I'll put in a plug for this great little app I like. The app is called Just Watch. Um, it's a little app that keeps track. You can type in any movie, any TV show, and it'll tell you what it's on. If you want to rent it, it tells you how much it is per episode or per for the movie. Or if it's free on Prime, it's free on Peacock, it's free on HBO. It's all right there. That's wonderful
That's fantastic. It's
because
called
there's
Just
so
Watch.
many choices.
Okay. No, I think that's a great way to do it. I know some smart TVs. I've got a Sony TV, and I can push the button and say what I want to hear, what I want to watch, and it will say where it is
Right.
for the most part. I can do that also.
But a lot of that is, yeah, it's available on Amazon to rent for $4.
Right.
You
But
know,
then
you
I'll
won't
see,
always-
okay, I got my Amazon account. I can go take a look and see if it's available
Sure.
as part of Prime. Are there any differences between, say, Fire Stick or Roku or Apple TV?
they're all very subtle, the differences. They're all pretty good technologically. I mean, they're all capable of 4K. So if you have a UHD TV, you can get the highest quality picture out of them streaming. Um, even Apple finally, Apple used to be the only place you could access your iTunes stuff or your Apple TV was only on Apple. But
Right.
even now, you can get an Apple TV app on your Roku. They finally, I completely forgot to mention Apple TV Plus is one of the streaming services too. There's another one.
They seem like they are lagging behind, which surprised me given the amount of money that Apple has. But I have Apple. I bought Apple. I bought a iPad last year, and as
Yeah.
part of that, they gave me a free year subscription to Apple
Mhm.
TV, and I ran through anything I wanted to see on there in about a minute and a half. I mean,
Right.
literally about a month. I watched um, Ted Lasso and The Morning Show, and there were a couple of movies on there that I found interesting, but that was kind of it. It just wasn't a lot of content there.
Yeah, Apple does have that challenge, certainly. They are struggling with trying to find their place in the streaming world, either as a programmer or a hardware device. In a lot of ways, Roku has succeeded more so than Apple in a lot of ways because Roku has so much stuff on there that's free that they can supplement with streaming advertising.
What are some of the free channels that people can get for streaming? I know there's a lot of them out there.
The primary two services really are Tubi and Pluto. And to be perfectly honest, I've looked at them before. They're not fantastic, but they're free. There are movies on there. Your Roku device has hundreds of movies for free that are ad supported. Maybe more than that. There's lots of services where you can watch things for free. But in terms of trying to replicate the traditional television experience,
Hmm.
if you look at something like Tubi, you open it up, it looks like your viewing guide on TV. But instead of your channels being, TLC, A&E, and ESPN, the channels are like the crime channel, the kids channel, or and it just shows old
All
stuff.
Andy Griffith all the time.
Well, I'm sure there is a channel just for Andy Griffith, but there's even things where they'll show, older seasons of Law and Order or things like that, but they're free, ad supported, and it's free. I mean, that's you get what you pay for.
Right. What other, besides YouTube TV, are there any other services that you recommend or that you've had any experience with that will bring people their local channels as well as
YouTube TV and Fubo. You'll
Fubo,
see,
right?
yeah,
Sling?
even Hulu had, Sling. Hulu has Hulu is still the largest streaming cable provider, and that's only like 4 million subscribers for what they call Hulu Live Plus TV, I think it's called, where you get real channels per se.
In terms of subscription costs, not all subscriptions are equal. And I look at it, I look at what the cost has been in terms of Prime or in terms of Netflix and how that has grown substantially over the years. Even HBO has had a pretty decent increase over the last couple of years. Is that because there are so many different services now? They're competing against each other for the best shows. So they're spending more money to get the content. So they have to pass that on to the consumer.
Yes, no question. It's billions of dollars that they're spending in content. Almost, it's per year they're spending billions of dollars on content development because content is what matters. Content is king. But like, look at Netflix. They're up to $20 a month now for the highest end subscription offering they have with
With
4K and
4K,
multiple
right.
profiles and all that. $20 a month. I mean, I think I started, it was, I don't know, $8.99 or something like that. It was originally. They're $20. They're the most expensive. But if you dive into Netflix's financials, I mean, how much more money are you going to leverage yourself into debt? It's billions and billions of dollars every year on the development of programming, which they have a lot of revenue. But when will Netflix ever be like, hey, we're smooth sailing here? It's billions of dollars. HBO Max at $15 a month, or $150 a year. Again, I still think is hands down the best deal you can get. Right. Most of the other ones, Paramount Plus, you can get between $50 and $100 a year, depending on whether you want commercials or not. Hulu's $7 to $13 a month, whether you want ads or not. Then you're back, then you're back in that whole thing where this whole movement began because people were like, well, I don't want to pay my cable bill anymore. It's $150 a month.
Now they're streaming and it's $350 a
right.
month.
And
Right.
everybody goes, well, I wish I had all these different streaming services all in one place. Right. Like the snake is eating its tail.
Matthew Gilbert, who's the TV critic for the Boston Globe, who I like a lot and I read on a regular basis, he recommends, and he says this all the time, switching streaming services every few months. Is that a good idea?
It is a good idea because if you look at like what you were talking about with Apple, where you went through everything in a minute and a half, well, you know what? In 6 months, there's Ted Lasso's going to be back, or there'll be another movie on there. So turn it back on. That's absolutely a great deal because it's easy to do. But like my dad, who he's almost 70, he hates signing up for things and then having to cancel them because he's like, well, I don't know if I can. Do I have to call him? Is it on the website? The hassle of canceling can sometimes be difficult. It's typically not for most of the streaming services. It's usually a couple mouse clicks and you're out of it.
And that is why I do like aggregating everything through one. So, for example, I've got all my, the independent film channel I have, and I've got Epix, and I've got Acorn TV, the British stuff, and I do that all through Prime.
Right.
So I know I can just go to Prime and I can see all the channels that I subscribe to, and I can just click on or off of them.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's a great thing to do because you're not tied into anything. Like my Apple TV, I had the same thing as you. I had a year for free. I'll turn it back on when Ted Lasso comes back. Right. But if you want to throw it old school, back when The Sopranos was on, 20 years ago, I used to turn HBO on when The Sopranos was on for 13 weeks and I didn't have it the rest of the year.
I think a lot of people did that. So that can apply to what we do every day.
I was going to say, you are seeing that with the streaming services, especially over the course of the past couple of years, when there's been these really big at-home destination movies that they put on streaming services. You can see a noticeable hike in subscriptions. Like when Disney put Hamilton on Disney Plus,
right,
there was a noticeable spike in new subscriptions.
Well, and that's what I said earlier on when we were talking about Disney Plus, and they had Get Back, the Beatles documentary.
Absolutely, people signed up for that.
That had to have added millions of subscribers for at least a short period of time.
And then it's the ebb and the flow. It's, well, if we get 10 million new people, how many are we going to keep beyond them watching the Beatles for a month and then canceling?
Right.
That's the new model because it's a short-term game in a lot of ways.
One last question. Movies. We're starting to see first-run movies now be available for streaming at the same time they're in the theater. How is that affecting the movie theater business? Or does it really impact in a positive way the streaming services?
So it definitely affects the streaming services in a positive way. You can clearly see that over the past 2 years about how many movies have shown up on. Look, last year, Warner Brothers committed their entire 2021 movie slate to HBO Max day one for free, which ultimately turned out to be a bad decision for them, but they did commit to it. It definitely moves the needle. People love that. That has been demonstrated to be the single biggest draw to a streaming service is a first run theatrical film, either available on the same day it's in the theaters or even on its own. Disney experimented with something called Premier Access, where you paid $30 to watch a brand new Disney movie at your home instead of waiting the window for it to be streaming. That does work. But to give you the full answer to that question, I think we need another 10 months because there are so many movies that are going to be bursting into the theaters in the next 6 months. Either some delayed blockbusters, things that were supposed to come out this year. People are ready to go back to the movies. And I think we have to wait and see on how the box office really recovers because look, Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out just before Christmas, is the third biggest movie of all time. And it came out right in the middle of the Omicron surge. Third biggest of all time. So prior to that, I would have said, oh man, people aren't going to go back to the movies. The streaming services are going to get them. But I don't know that I believe that anymore. I think I think it has changed for certain types of movies. Big blockbusters, tentpole movies, they're going to keep the movies open, kind of like how they always used to. It was always the big opening weekends for whatever blockbuster there was ever since the 70s.
Of course.
Right. But I think the days of going to the theaters to see a mediocre adult rom-com or drama, it ain't happening. They're either not going to come out in the theaters or they're going to be like, look, the new Jennifer Lopez movie, Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson, Marry Me, right, is free on Peacock now.
As it should be.
Or you can go to the theaters. Right. Well, that's the thing. Maybe as it should be.
Yeah.
But either way, it's available there for you to watch for free.
But there are certain movies that, obviously that would be a date night movie, but there are some movies that, I don't go to the movie theater a lot, but I will always go see the new James Bond movie in the theater. It's that kind of action movie that you want to see in the big screen, or the Bourne movies, or
right. Those are tentpole action films.
Right.
But like if you look at, an adult thriller, like I'll say Gone Girl as an example, right? Will we see Gone Girl be successful in the theaters moving forward after what just happened in the past 2 years with streaming and movies? That's only for time to tell, but the Avengers and Spider-Man and Batman, they're still going to put butts in the theaters no matter how the movie comes out. People will go to see it.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. Adam Moreau, I really appreciate you taking the time and spending it with us today, and I hope that we'll be able to get you back on sometime soon in the future.
Hey, always a pleasure.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I would, again, encourage you to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube, and you can always visit me at theadamwrightshow.com. You can also send me an email there at theadamwrightshow@gmail.com. Have a great day.